I'm Cynthia, I'm 28, and I just discovered my family created a secret group chat to divide my dying grandmother's $2 million inheritance without me. My sister actually posted, "Less one person, more money for us," while I was changing grandma's catheter. Let me just say, finding out your family considers you disposable while you're literally wiping their mother's drool is quite the wake-up call. But I kept those screenshots. And tomorrow, we're meeting with my lawyer. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely betrayed by family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. 3 months ago, when Grandma Helen was diagnosed with end-stage kidney failure, I was the only one who stepped up. Not my sister Jessica, who lives 20 minutes away. Not my brother Marcus, who's been unemployed for 6 months. Not my parents, who suddenly developed every excuse in the book. Just me, taking unpaid leave from my marketing job to become a full-time caregiver. Everyone thought I was crazy. "Cynthia, you're sacrificing your career for an old woman who's going to die anyway," my mother said, like Grandma wasn't sitting right there. But I loved Grandma Helen. She'd raised me more than my parents ever did, and she deserved dignity in her final months. The house I moved into hadn't been updated since 1987. Floral wallpaper, creaky floors, and a bathroom that required actual engineering skills to navigate. But it was Grandma's house, and she wanted to die there, surrounded by 60 years of memories instead of sterile hospital walls. The daily routine was exhausting. Medications every 4 hours, oxygen tank maintenance, physical therapy exercises, doctor appointments twice a week. I learned to administer injections, operate medical equipment, and interpret symptoms that could mean the difference between a manageable day and an emergency room visit. But we had good days too. Grandma would tell stories about her youth when she worked as a secretary and saved every penny to buy this house. She'd talk about Grandpa Robert, who died 5 years ago, and how they'd built their construction business from nothing into something worth $2 million. "That money's going to change someone's life," she'd say, squeezing my hand with surprising strength. "I want it to go to someone who understands the value of hard work and family loyalty." I assumed she meant all of us, her children and grandchildren, splitting the inheritance equally like normal families do. I never imagined they were already making plans that didn't include me. The first sign something was wrong came during last week's family dinner. Everyone showed up, which was suspicious since they'd barely visited during Grandma's illness. They sat around the dining room table, making small talk while avoiding eye contact with me. "How's the job search going, Marcus?" Grandma asked. "Actually, I'm taking some time to figure out my next move," he replied, which was code for still unemployed but feeling optimistic about it. "And Jessica, how's the new house?" "We're looking at a bigger place, actually, something with more space for the kids." They all seemed remarkably confident about their financial futures for people who'd been struggling just months before. But I was too tired from night shift caregiving to analyze the subtext. That night, after everyone left and Grandma was asleep, I found myself scrolling through Facebook while doing laundry. That's when I saw it. Jessica had posted a photo from earlier that evening, the whole family gathered around Grandma's dining table, with a caption that made my blood freeze. "Family planning meeting complete. Some big changes coming soon." The comments were even worse. Marcus had replied with a money bag emoji. My mother had written, "Patience pays off." And my father, who never used social media, had somehow managed to type, "Justice will be served." They were planning something. And based on their smug expressions in that photo, it was something that would benefit them while I continued changing adult diapers and sleeping 4 hours a night. I screenshot the post immediately, though I couldn't have explained why. Instinct, maybe. Or just the paranoid feeling that comes from being the only responsible person in a family of opportunists. But the real revelation came 2 days later, when Jessica's phone buzzed during her rare visit. She grabbed it quickly, but not before I caught a glimpse of the notification. A group message from inheritance planning with 7 participants. 7. Grandma wasn't included, and apparently neither was I. "What group chat is that?" I asked Jessica, trying to keep my voice casual while internally screaming. She clutched her phone like I'd caught her with state secrets. "Oh, just family stuff. Coordinating who brings what to Sunday dinner." Lies. We hadn't had a coordinated Sunday dinner in 3 years, but I smiled and nodded like her excuse made perfect sense, because I'd learned something valuable growing up in this family. Information is power, and desperate people make mistakes. Jessica stayed exactly 18 minutes, just long enough to take a selfie with Grandma for social media sympathy points. After she left, I did what any rational person would do. I went through Grandma's phone. Now, before you judge me, understand that I'd been managing Grandma's affairs for months. I paid her bills, scheduled her appointments, and handled her correspondence. Checking her phone wasn't snooping, it was caregiving. Or at least that's what I told myself while scrolling through her messages. What I found made my stomach drop. A text thread between Grandma and my father from last week, after the mysterious family dinner. Dad: Mom, we need to discuss your will. Are you sure about your current arrangements? Grandma: Robert and I planned everything carefully. The will is exactly as we intended. Dad: But circumstances have changed. Cynthia is sacrificing her career to take care of you. That seems unfair to your other grandchildren who are building their futures. Reading that made me want to throw the phone across the room. Sacrificing my career? I'd taken leave to care for the woman who raised me, and somehow that was being twisted into evidence that I deserved less inheritance? But Grandma's response restored my faith in human decency. Cynthia is here because she loves me, not because she expects payment. The will stands as written. That conversation happened 4 days ago. Whatever the family was planning in their secret group chat, it definitely wasn't about accepting Grandma's wishes gracefully. I spent the rest of the afternoon strategically positioned where I could monitor everyone's phones. When Marcus visited that evening, I watched him constantly checking messages with a satisfied smirk. When Mom stopped by with groceries, she stepped outside twice to take calls that made her giggle like a teenager. They weren't even trying to hide their excitement about something that apparently required excluding both Grandma and me from their communications. That night, after giving Grandma her evening medications and helping her settle into bed, I sat in the kitchen and tried to piece together what I knew. A secret family group chat called Inheritance Planning. 7 participants, excluding the person whose inheritance they were planning, and the person actually caring for her. Conversations about changing circumstances, and fairness to grandchildren who were building their futures. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was conspiracy. I grabbed my laptop and started documenting everything. Screenshots of Jessica's Facebook post with the suspicious comments, photos of the family gathering from last week, copies of the text messages between Dad and Grandma, a timeline of every family visit during Grandma's illness, noting how their behavior had shifted from absent to suddenly interested. At 2 a.m., while checking Grandma's oxygen levels, I made a decision that would change everything. I downloaded a data recovery app and ran it on my old phone, the one I'd upgraded from 6 months ago but kept for backup photos. The app recovered dozens of deleted messages and photos, including something that made my hands shake. A screenshot I'd accidentally taken 3 weeks ago when my phone glitched during a family video call. The screenshot showed Marcus's phone screen in the background, displaying what looked like a group chat with multiple participants. I zoomed in, enhancing the image until I could make out partial text. Lawyers said we need, and Cynthia won't know until, evidence. Actual evidence that they'd been planning this for weeks, possibly months, while I was learning to operate medical equipment and sleeping in a chair next to Grandma's bed. My family was consulting lawyers about how to circumvent her wishes. The phone recovery app had a search function. I typed in inheritance and found something that made me feel physically sick. A text thread from 2 months ago, right after Grandma's diagnosis, between Jessica and Marcus. Jessica: This could actually work out perfectly. If Cynthia's playing nursemaid, she's not thinking about money. Marcus: Mom says we need to be smart about this. Make sure everything looks natural. Jessica: What if she finds out? Marcus: She won't. She's too busy being a martyr to pay attention to business. Martyr: They thought I was being a martyr for loving my grandmother. I printed everything, created digital backups on 3 different cloud services, and organized the evidence into folders labeled by date and participant. If my family wanted to play legal games with a dying woman's wishes, they were about to learn that I wasn't as naive as they assumed. But I needed more proof, solid, undeniable evidence of their conspiracy, and I had a feeling that tomorrow's family visit would provide exactly that. Have you ever experienced family members plotting behind your back during a crisis? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This story gets much worse before it gets better. The next morning brought what I call the great performance. Everyone showed up at once, which hadn't happened since Grandma's birthday 6 months ago. They arrived with flowers, homemade food, and concerned expressions that looked rehearsed. Cynthia, you look exhausted, Mom announced loudly enough for Grandma to hear from the next room. This can't be sustainable. Translation: We need you to look incompetent in front of Grandma so she'll question your ability to handle responsibilities. Jessica nodded sympathetically. We've been worried about you isolating yourself here. It's not healthy. Marcus jumped in with his contribution. Maybe it's time to consider professional care for Grandma. You know, people trained for this kind of thing. The coordination was impressive. They'd clearly practiced this conversation, probably in their secret group chat. each taking turns to plant seeds of doubt about my caregiving abilities while positioning themselves as the reasonable family members thinking about everyone's well-being. But I'd learned their strategy from the recovered text messages. They wanted Grandma to see me as overwhelmed and incapable, possibly unstable from the stress of caregiving. If they could convince her I was falling apart, she might change her will to prevent me from inheriting money I supposedly couldn't handle responsibly. "I'm managing fine," I said calmly, refilling Grandma's water glass with steady hands. "The doctors are pleased with her progress, and I've got all her medications organized perfectly." "But at what cost to yourself?" Dad pressed. "You're sacrificing your career, your social life, your future." Grandma spoke up from her recliner. "Cynthia's exactly where she wants to be. She's been taking excellent care of me." The room fell silent. They'd expected her to voice concerns about my well-being, not defend my choices. I watched them exchange glances, recalibrating their approach. "Of course she has," Mom recovered smoothly. "We're just saying it's a lot for one person. Maybe we could take shifts, give Cynthia some breaks." Now that was interesting. For 3 months, they'd been too busy to help with caregiving. But suddenly they wanted to take shifts? More likely they wanted access to Grandma without me present. Time to work their manipulation without witnesses. "That's thoughtful," I replied. "But Grandma's comfortable with our routine." Her doctors emphasized the importance of consistency in her care. Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smirked before catching herself and composing her expression. "Actually, I need to step outside for a quick call. Work emergency." She disappeared onto the front porch, and through the window, I could see her typing rapidly, probably updating the group chat about how their intervention was going. Marcus stood up. "I'll help Jessica with her work situation. We'll be right back." Translation: emergency strategy session in the group chat because our plan isn't working. That left Mom and Dad with Grandma and me. Perfect. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but instead crept down the hallway to eavesdrop. "Mom, have you given any more thought to what we discussed?" Dad's voice was gentle but persistent. "About what, dear?" "About making sure your affairs are in order. We just want to be prepared for any situation." Grandma's voice carried clearly down the hallway. "Everything is in order, Thomas. Has been for years. But with Cynthia here all the time, we worry she might be influencing your decisions. Not intentionally, of course. But when someone becomes so dependent on a caregiver," I clenched my fists. They were actually suggesting I was manipulating a dying woman for financial gain. Grandma's response was sharp. "Cynthia has never asked me for anything. She's here because she loves me, which is more than I can say for some people." Awkward silence. Then Mom's voice, syrupy sweet. "We all love you, Helen. That's why we want to make sure you're not being taken advantage of." "Taken advantage of?" Grandma's voice rose. "The only people taking advantage are the ones who disappeared when I got sick and reappeared when they remembered I have money." I almost cheered. Grandma wasn't the confused elderly woman they'd hoped to manipulate. She was sharp, aware, and apparently onto their scheme. Through the window, I could see Jessica and Marcus huddled over their phones, typing furiously. Whatever they were discussing in that group chat, their backup plan was being activated right now. I returned to the living room with my phone discreetly recording in my pocket. If they wanted to continue this conversation, I was going to capture every word. "Feeling better?" Mom asked with fake concern. "Much better. What were you discussing?" Dad cleared his throat. "Just family matters, nothing important." Jessica and Marcus returned, their expressions carefully neutral. But I noticed Jessica's phone screen was still lit up with an active group chat. "Everything okay with work?" I asked innocently. "Fine. Just coordinating some schedules," she replied, slipping the phone into her purse. They stayed another hour, making small talk and pretending to care about Grandma's comfort. But I could feel the tension underlying every conversation. They were planning something bigger than I'd realized, and my presence was complicating their timeline. After they left, Grandma looked exhausted. "They tire me out more than the kidney failure," she said, closing her eyes. "What do you think they want?" I asked, though I already knew. What people like that always want. Something that doesn't belong to them. That evening, I reviewed the audio recording from my phone. Most of it was useless small talk, but I'd captured something significant. Right before they left, while saying goodbye, I'd picked up Marcus whispering to Jessica, "Tuesday meeting is still on. Bring the documents." Tuesday, 3 days from now. And they had documents. I spent the next hour researching local law firms, cross-referencing their practice areas with estate planning and inheritance disputes. If my family was meeting with lawyers on Tuesday, I needed to know which firm they'd chosen and what kind of legal strategy they were pursuing. But first, I needed to make sure Grandma's will was actually filed properly and couldn't be challenged easily. Because something told me my family's Tuesday meeting wasn't going to be about accepting her wishes gracefully. The war for Grandma's inheritance was about to begin, and I was finally ready to fight back. Monday morning brought the first direct attack. I was helping Grandma with her breakfast when her lawyer called. "Ms. Morrison, this is Robert Chen from Chen & Associates. I've received an unusual request regarding your grandmother's estate planning." My stomach dropped. What kind of request? Someone claiming to be a concerned family member has asked us to review Helen's mental competency for estate planning purposes. They've suggested she may need updated legal guidance given her current health situation. I gripped the phone tighter. Who made this request? I can't discuss details over the phone, but I think you should know that your grandmother's will is being questioned. I'd recommend scheduling an appointment this week. After hanging up, I found Grandma staring at me with knowing eyes. "They're making their move, aren't they?" she asked. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. My family wasn't just planning to contest the will after Grandma died. They were trying to force her to change it while she was alive, using her illness as evidence that she was incompetent to make financial decisions. The strategy was brilliant and disgusting. Present themselves as concerned family members worried about an elderly woman being influenced by her caregiver. Claim that my constant presence had created an unhealthy dependency that was affecting her judgment. Suggest that her current will, which presumably left me a significant portion of the inheritance, was the result of manipulation rather than genuine choice. "What does your will actually say?" I asked gently. Grandma smiled. "The house goes to you, since you're the only one who's ever treated it like home. The business assets get divided among all the grandchildren equally. But there's a life insurance policy worth about $1.2 million that I can designate however I choose. My inheritance wasn't just a portion of her assets. It was substantial enough to change my life completely. No wonder my family was panicking. And the life insurance? Goes to you? You've earned it." That phrase hit me like lightning. Earned it how? 3 months of round-the-clock care, taking leave from your job, sleeping in a chair so I wouldn't be alone. Love like that can't be bought, Cynthia. It can only be recognized. I started crying, not just because of the money, but because someone finally acknowledged that love isn't just words and holiday visits. It's showing up when things get difficult and staying until they get better. But my emotional moment was interrupted by the doorbell. Through the window, I saw a man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked Grandma. "No, but I have a feeling we're about to get unexpected visitors regularly now." I opened the door to find a middle-aged man with perfectly styled gray hair and a practiced smile. "Good morning, I'm David Richardson from Richardson Mills & Associates. I'm here to speak with Helen Morrison about her estate planning needs." The law firm my family had hired, and they'd sent someone directly to Grandma's house, probably hoping to catch her without me present. "She's not available for unscheduled appointments," I said firmly. "I understand. But when elderly clients are dealing with complex family situations, we sometimes provide in-home consultations to ensure they're receiving unbiased legal advice." Unbiased. As if showing up uninvited at the request of family members who wanted to change her will was somehow neutral. "If Mrs. Morrison needs legal advice, she'll contact her own attorney. Have a good day." I closed the door, but through the window I watched him walk to his car and make a phone call, probably reporting back to my family that their surprise attack had failed. "Who was that?" Grandma asked. "A lawyer your family hired to convince you that you're too sick to make your own decisions." Grandma's expression hardened. Those vultures. They couldn't wait until I was actually dead to start circling. That afternoon, I called Robert Chen and scheduled an emergency appointment for Wednesday. If my family was escalating to legal warfare, I needed to understand Grandma's rights and protections. But first, I had to survive their Tuesday meeting, which I was now certain would involve strategizing how to remove me from Grandma's care and prove her mental incompetence. At 6 p.m., my phone started buzzing with family group messages. Not the secret inheritance chat, but the general family thread that included me. "Mom. Family dinner tomorrow night at our house. Important discussion about Grandma's care. Jessica. We've been researching assisted living facilities with excellent reputations. Marcus. Found some great options with medical staff and recreational activities. Dad. Time to consider what's best for everyone involved." They were setting the stage for Wednesday's conversation, where they'd present their research about professional care facilities and argue that I was preventing Grandma from receiving proper medical attention. My response was carefully crafted. Grandma's doctors are satisfied with her current care arrangement. She's comfortable at home and doesn't want to be relocated during her final months. I think we should respect her wishes. The reply came immediately from Jessica. But what about your wishes, Cynthia? You're sacrificing everything for someone who might live for years. Is that fair to your future? There it was. The setup. They wanted me to express frustration or resentment about caregiving, which they'd use as evidence that I was becoming psychologically unstable from the stress. Instead, I wrote, "I'm exactly where I want to be. Grandma raised me, and I'm honored to care for her now." Radio silence. That wasn't the response they'd hoped for. An hour later, Jessica called directly. "Cynthia, we need to talk privately. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow morning? I can't leave Grandma for extended periods. Her medication schedule is very precise. Bring the nurse. We hired someone to cover for a few hours so you could take a break." They'd hired a nurse, without consulting me or Grandma. Another piece of their strategy to demonstrate that professional care was superior to family caregiving. That's thoughtful, but Grandma doesn't like strangers in her house. She gets anxious with new people. "Cynthia." Jessica's voice dropped to what she probably thought was a caring tone. "We're worried about you. This isolation isn't healthy. When was the last time you had a real conversation with someone your own age?" I almost laughed. She was trying to gaslight me into believing that caring for family was a sign of mental illness. "I'm fine, Jessica, but I appreciate your concern." After I hung up, I realized something important. They needed me to appear unstable, isolated, and overwhelmed to make their case that I was manipulating Grandma through emotional dependency. So I was going to give them exactly the opposite. Tomorrow, I'd attend their family dinner looking composed, confident, and completely in control, and I'd bring my phone to record every word they said. Because if they wanted to play psychological warfare, they'd picked the wrong opponent. Tuesday evening's family dinner was a masterclass in manipulation. I arrived at my parents' house to find the dining room set like a corporate boardroom, complete with printed packets at each place setting. "Cynthia, we're so glad you could make it," Mom gushed, like I hadn't been guilted into attending. "How's our patient?" "Grandma's fine. Mrs. Martinez from next door is with her." I'd specifically chosen an elderly neighbor instead of accepting their hired nurse, and I could see the disappointment flash across their faces. They'd wanted me to use their professional caregiver as evidence that I was acknowledging my inadequacy. Dad gestured to the packets. "We've put together some information about Helen's options. Just want everyone to be informed about what's available." I picked up my packet and nearly choked. Brochures for 3 different assisted living facilities, pricing information for in-home medical care, and a printout titled "Signs of Caregiver Burnout," with several items highlighted in yellow, subtle as a brick through a window. "This is comprehensive," I said, flipping through the materials. "How long have you been researching this?" "A few weeks," Jessica replied. "We wanted to be thorough." Weeks. While I was learning to operate medical equipment, they were shopping for ways to remove Grandma from her home. Marcus opened his packet and began reading from the highlighted sections. According to this, caregiver burnout can lead to depression, anxiety, and impaired judgment. It says family members should watch for signs like social isolation, sleeping disorders, and emotional instability. He was literally reading symptoms at me like a diagnosis. I activated the voice recorder on my phone and smiled pleasantly. "That's concerning. Have you noticed any of those symptoms in me?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. They'd spent weeks building a case that I was psychologically unfit to care for Grandma, but they needed me to admit it myself. "Well," Mom began carefully, "you have been more withdrawn lately. And you're always tired when we visit." "I'm tired because I'm providing round-the-clock medical care to someone I love. That's different from burnout." Dad leaned forward. "But at what cost, Cynthia? You're 28 years old. You should be building your career, dating, thinking about your own future. Instead, you're playing nurse to someone who might need care for years." There it was, the core of their argument. Caring for family was a waste of my youth and potential, something only an unstable person would choose over personal advancement. "Grandma isn't going to live for years, Dad. Her doctors have been very clear about her prognosis." Jessica jumped in. "But what if they're wrong? What if she stabilizes? Are you prepared to give up the next decade of your life? If that's what she needs?" "Yes." The room fell silent. That wasn't the answer they'd expected or wanted. Marcus tried a different approach. "We've been talking to elder care specialists about Helen's options. They say that family caregivers often develop unhealthy attachments that can actually harm the patient." "Unhealthy attachments?" "Like when a caregiver becomes so invested in being needed that they resist outside help, even when it's better for the patient." I stared at him. "Are you suggesting I'm keeping Grandma sick so she'll depend on me?" "Not intentionally," Mom said quickly. "But sometimes people develop patterns without realizing it." They were accusing me of Munchausen by proxy. The implication was that I was sabotaging Grandma's health to maintain my role as her caregiver, which would explain why I was inheriting money and they weren't. That's an interesting theory, I said calmly. What do Grandma's doctors think about her care? Dad shifted uncomfortably. We haven't spoken directly with her medical team. Why not? Well, patient privacy laws make it complicated. I have medical power of attorney. I could arrange a conference call so you could hear directly from her physicians about her condition and prognosis. The offer clearly terrified them. If Grandma's doctors confirmed that she was receiving excellent care and had a terminal diagnosis, their entire argument would collapse. That might be premature, Jessica said quickly. We're still in the information-gathering phase. I smiled and pulled out my phone. Actually, let me call Dr. A. Williams right now. He's worked with lots of family caregivers. He could give you his professional opinion about whether my care is helping or harming Grandma. Cynthia, no. Mom's voice was sharp. This isn't the time for phone calls. Why not? If you're genuinely concerned about Grandma's well-being, wouldn't you want reassurance from her doctor? Dad cleared his throat. Let's focus on the practical matters. We've identified several facilities that could provide round-the-clock medical supervision. I flipped through their brochures, noting the costs. These places are expensive, $8,000 to $12,000 per month. How long do you think Grandma's assets would last at those rates? Marcus did quick math in his head, and I watched his expression change as he realized the implication. If Grandma spent her final months in an expensive facility, there'd be significantly less money left to inherit. Her health is more important than money, Jessica said, but her tone was less convincing now. I agree completely. That's why she's staying in her own home, where she's comfortable and surrounded by things she loves. Her doctors support that decision. The evening continued for another hour, with them presenting various arguments about professional care and me calmly dismantling each one. They tried emotional manipulation, suggesting I was being selfish. They tried medical authority, claiming professionals knew better than family. They even tried reverse psychology, implying that I was too good for caregiving and deserved better. Nothing worked, because I had something they didn't: actual knowledge of Grandma's condition, her wishes, and her medical team's recommendations. As I prepared to leave, Dad made one final attempt. Cynthia, we're having another family meeting Thursday night. We'd like you to bring Helen so she can participate in discussions about her own care. They wanted access to Grandma without me controlling the conversation. A chance to present their arguments directly and convince her that I was overwhelmed and possibly unstable. I'll ask her if she's feeling up to it, I replied, but she gets tired easily in the evenings. That night, I reviewed my audio recording and transcribed the most damaging quotes. They'd built their entire case on the assumption that caring for family was abnormal behavior that indicated psychological problems. But they'd also revealed something important. They were terrified of involving Grandma's medical team in these discussions, which meant Dr. Williams and the other specialists would probably support my caregiving approach. Thursday's meeting was going to be their final attempt to convince Grandma that I was unfit to inherit her money. But I was ready for them, because tomorrow I was meeting with her lawyer to make sure her will was absolutely bulletproof. Wednesday's meeting with Robert Chen changed everything. I sat in his office while he reviewed Grandma's will with the expression of someone who'd seen this exact scenario countless times. Your grandmother's estate planning is remarkably thorough, he said, adjusting his glasses. She and your grandfather updated everything 6 months before he died. The will is clear, witnessed properly, and filed correctly. So my family can't contest it? They can try. Anyone can contest a will. But they'd need to prove either mental incompetence at the time of signing or undue influence. Given that this will was created years before her illness and before you became her caregiver, neither argument holds water. I felt a weight lift from my chest. What about the life insurance policy? That's separate from the will. She can change beneficiaries on that policy anytime she wants, and it doesn't require probate. If she's mentally competent when she makes changes, there's nothing anyone can do about it. And she is mentally competent? Chen smiled. I spoke with her yesterday. Your grandmother is sharp as ever. She knows exactly what she wants and why she wants it. He leaned forward. But I need to warn you about something. David Richardson contacted me after his visit to your grandmother's house. He's trying to build a case that she's being isolated from family and influenced by her caregiver. What kind of case? Elder abuse. If they can convince Adult Protective Services that you're financially exploiting a vulnerable elderly person, they could petition for guardianship. That would give them control over all her financial decisions. My blood turned to ice. Can they do that? Not easily. They'd need evidence of actual abuse or exploitation. But the accusation alone can trigger investigations that are disruptive and stressful for elderly patients. I thought about Richardson's unexpected visit and my family's coordinated campaign to prove I was psychologically unstable. They weren't just trying to change Grandma's will. They were trying to remove her legal right to control her own money. How do I protect her? Chen pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Documentation. Medical records showing she's receiving appropriate care. Financial records proving you haven't accessed her accounts inappropriately. Witness statements from people who can testify about her mental competence and your caregiving. What about recordings? If they say things that prove they're trying to manipulate her? Depends on your state's consent laws for recording. But yes, if you can legally capture them admitting to conspiracy or elder abuse, that would be powerful evidence. I left his office with a strategy and a timeline. If my family was planning to file guardianship papers, they'd probably do it after Thursday's meeting, using Grandma's refusal to enter assisted living as evidence that she was being influenced against her own interests. That afternoon, I called Dr. Williams and explained the situation. This is unfortunately common, he said. Family members who've been absent during an illness suddenly appear when money becomes involved. But your grandmother's medical records clearly show she's receiving excellent care. Her medication compliance is perfect, her vital signs are stable, and her mental status exams show no cognitive impairment. Would you be willing to provide written documentation of that? Absolutely. I'll prepare a comprehensive report about her mental competency and the quality of care she's receiving. If anyone tries to claim she's being abused or neglected, they'll have to argue with medical evidence. That evening, I sat with Grandma and explained what was happening. They want to control my money, she said matter-of-factly. I've seen this before with other families. Someone gets sick, and suddenly everyone becomes very concerned about their well-being. Are you prepared for tomorrow night? They're going to try to convince you that I'm overwhelmed and that you need professional care. Grandma smiled. Honey, I've been dealing with people who underestimate my intelligence for 78 years. Your family isn't the first group to assume that being old makes me stupid. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Let them talk. Give them enough rope to hang themselves. Then we'll show them what happens when you try to bully a woman who survived the Great Depression. Thursday evening arrived with everyone appearing unusually formal. Mom wore her best dress, Dad brought flowers, and Jessica showed up with a professionally prepared notebook. They'd brought backup, Uncle David and Aunt Sarah, Grandma's other children who lived 3 hours away and hadn't visited since Christmas. Helen, you look wonderful, Aunt Sarah gushed, settling into the chair closest to Grandma. We've been so worried about you. Uncle David nodded gravely. The family's been discussing your situation. We want to make sure you're getting the best possible care. I noticed how they positioned themselves around Grandma's chair, blocking her view of me. Classic intimidation technique. Isolate the target from their support system. Jessica opened her notebook. Grandma, we've researched some amazing facilities that specialize in kidney disease. They have registered nurses available 24/7, recreational therapy, and nutritional programs designed specifically for your condition. Sounds expensive, Grandma replied mildly. Your health is worth any cost, Dad said. We're not worried about money. Liar. They were worried about money being spent on care instead of being preserved for inheritance. Mom leaned forward. Helen, we're also concerned about Cynthia. She's been sacrificing so much to take care of you. It's not fair to her. Did Cynthia tell you she felt sacrificed? She doesn't have to. We can see how tired she is, how isolated she's become. This arrangement isn't healthy for either of you. Grandma looked around the room at each family member. Let me understand this correctly. You want me to leave my home, where I've lived for 60 years, to go live with strangers in an institutional setting so that Cynthia can return to her normal life. Is that accurate? We want what's best for everyone, Uncle David said. And you've determined what's best for me without asking my opinion? Aunt Sarah jumped in. Of course we value your opinion, but sometimes when we're sick we can't see situations clearly. Family has to step in and make difficult decisions. There it was, the accusation that Grandma was mentally incompetent, disguised as loving concern. Grandma's voice became dangerously quiet. Are you suggesting that I'm not capable of making my own decisions? Not incapable. Jessica backtracked quickly. Just that you might be influenced by someone who's become very emotionally attached to being your caregiver. They were accusing me of manipulating Grandma while sitting in her living room trying to manipulate her themselves. The irony was breathtaking. I see, Grandma said. So Cynthia is manipulating me to stay in my own home. And you're trying to save me by convincing me to leave it? The room fell silent. When put that bluntly, their argument sounded ridiculous. Dad tried to recover. Mom, we just want you to be safe and comfortable. I am safe and comfortable. Cynthia makes sure I take my medications on time, helps me maintain my independence, and treats me with dignity. What exactly would professional strangers do better? Marcus spoke up. They'd provide medical expertise that Cynthia doesn't have. My doctors visit twice a week. They've consistently praised the care I'm receiving. Are you questioning their medical judgment? Another silence. They couldn't argue with her medical team without sounding unreasonable. Besides, Grandma continued, I've been thinking about my estate planning. Given how concerned everyone is about my welfare, I want to make sure my assets go to someone who actually demonstrates care rather than just talks about it. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. She was threatening to change her will in favor of the person they were trying to remove from her life. Uncle David stood up abruptly. Helen, you shouldn't make major financial decisions when you're not feeling well. I feel fine, and my lawyer assures me that I'm mentally competent to make whatever decisions I choose. She'd dropped the bomb they'd been dreading. Not only was she refusing to enter assisted living, she was considering changing her will to further favor me. Jessica's voice was strained. Grandma, maybe we should table this discussion. Everyone's emotions are running high. My emotions are perfectly stable, dear. It's your panic I can hear. They left 15 minutes later, their strategy in shambles. Instead of convincing Grandma that I was manipulating her, they demonstrated their own manipulation so clearly that she was threatening to rewrite her will entirely in my favor. After they were gone, Grandma looked at me with satisfaction. That went well, she said. They're going to escalate now. This was their last attempt at persuasion. Let them escalate. I've got lawyers, doctors, and a very clear will. Plus something they don't have. What's that? The truth. And in my experience, the truth has a way of winning eventually. But I knew my family wasn't done. Thursday's meeting had been about convincing Grandma to cooperate voluntarily. Now they'd moved to legal force. I just hoped we were ready for the war that was coming. Friday morning brought the first shot in the legal war. A certified letter arrived addressed to Grandma, but I signed for it since she was sleeping. The letterhead read Richardson, Mills and Associates, and the content made my hands shake. Dear Mrs. Morrison, we represent concerned family members who have observed significant changes in your living situation and decision-making processes. We respectfully request a meeting to discuss your current care arrangements and ensure your best interests are being protected. Legal speak for, we're building a case that you're being abused and we want access to gather evidence. I called Robert Chen immediately. They're fishing, he said after I read the letter aloud. They want to interview her without you present, hoping she'll say something they can twist into evidence of mental incompetence or undue influence. Should she meet with them? Absolutely not. Any conversation she has with opposing counsel can be subpoenaed later and taken out of context. I'll draft a response declining the meeting and directing all communication through my office. But the letter was just the opening move. That afternoon, while I was helping Grandma with physical therapy exercises, a caseworker from Adult Protective Services appeared at the door. Ms. Morrison, I'm Sarah Webb from APS. We've received a report of potential elder abuse at this residence. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of report? Allegations that an elderly resident is being financially exploited and medically neglected by a family member. I need to conduct a welfare check. I let her in, knowing that refusing would look suspicious. Sarah Webb was thorough, professional, and clearly experienced with family manipulation cases. She interviewed Grandma privately for 30 minutes, examined her medications, reviewed her medical equipment, and inspected her living conditions. Then she requested my financial records to verify that I hadn't been accessing Grandma's accounts inappropriately. Everything appears to be in order, she concluded. Mrs. Morrison is clearly receiving excellent care, her mental faculties are completely intact, and there's no evidence of financial exploitation. I'll be recommending that this case be closed. After she left, I felt simultaneously relieved and furious. My family had weaponized government services designed to protect vulnerable elderly people, turning legitimate safeguards into tools for harassment. Who do you think called APS? I asked Grandma. Probably David. He has a lawyer friend who would know exactly what accusations trigger investigations. That evening, my phone exploded with family group messages. But instead of their usual manipulation tactics, they'd switched to open hostility. Dad, Cynthia, your refusal to consider professional care for Mom is selfish and dangerous. Jessica, we're not going to stand by while you isolate her from family who love her. Marcus, this martyrdom complex has gone too far. Mom needs real medical attention. Uncle David, Helen's behavior yesterday was concerning. She seemed agitated and confused about what's best for her. They were creating a paper trail of concerns about Grandma's mental state and my caregiving, building their case for guardianship proceedings. I screenshotted everything and forwarded it to Robert Chen with a message. Evidence of coordinated harassment campaign. Saturday brought an unexpected ally. Mrs. Martinez, the neighbor who'd stayed with Grandma during the family dinner, knocked on our door with a concerned expression. "Cynthia, someone was asking questions about you yesterday. A man in a suit said he was investigating Helen's care situation." "What kind of questions?" "Whether you seemed overwhelmed? If Helen appeared frightened or confused? If there were any unusual noises from the house?" I told him Helen's never been happier, and you're the best caregiver I've ever seen. They'd hired a private investigator to canvass the neighborhood, looking for any neighbor who might provide evidence of abuse or neglect. Did anyone else talk to him? Mr. Peterson next door said the same thing I did, but the new people 3 houses down don't really know you, so they couldn't say much either way. I spent Saturday documenting everything. Photos of Grandma's medications properly organized, her medical equipment clean and functional, her living space comfortable and safe. I compiled letters from her doctors, reports from APS, testimonials from neighbors. If my family wanted to build a case that I was abusing or exploiting Grandma, they'd have to argue against overwhelming evidence to the contrary. But Sunday morning brought their master stroke. Jessica called, her voice heavy with fake sorrow. "Cynthia, we need to talk. I have something to show you." She arrived with a manila folder and an expression of reluctant duty. "This is really hard for me to share," she began, opening the folder to reveal printed screenshots of social media posts. "But we found these on your Facebook page." The screenshots showed posts from my account complaining about the stress of caregiving, frustration with family members who wouldn't help, and resentment about sacrificing my career, posts I'd never written. "These aren't mine," I said immediately. "Cynthia, they're posted from your account. Look at the timestamps and the profile information." The posts were sophisticated forgeries. Someone had created fake screenshots that looked legitimate, complete with realistic timestamps and comment threads. "Jessica, I never wrote any of these. You know I don't post personal family information on social media. But you have been under a lot of stress. Maybe you posted them during difficult moments and forgot." They were trying to gaslight me into believing I'd written posts that revealed psychological instability and resentment toward Grandma. Posts that would perfectly support their argument that I was an unfit caregiver motivated by financial gain rather than love. "Check my actual Facebook page right now," I said, pulling out my phone. Jessica hesitated. "Well, you could have deleted them after posting. Then check the cached versions. Check Facebook's activity log. There are ways to verify when posts were actually published versus when screenshots were created." Her hesitation told me everything. These weren't real posts that had been deleted. They were fabricated evidence designed to support their legal case. "I think you should consider getting some help," Jessica said, closing the folder. "This level of stress isn't healthy, and it's affecting your judgment." After she left, I called Robert Chen and described the fake social media posts. "They're building a comprehensive case for guardianship," he said grimly. "Fake evidence of your psychological instability, reports to APS alleging abuse, private investigators looking for neighborhood complaints. This is a coordinated legal assault." "What's their timeline?" "Probably within the next week. They want to file before your grandmother's condition stabilizes or improves, while they can still argue that immediate intervention is necessary." That night, I sat with Grandma and explained the escalation. "They're not just trying to change your will anymore. They want legal control over all your financial decisions." Grandma nodded calmly. "How much time do we have?" "Robert thinks they'll file guardianship papers within days. Then it's time for our nuclear option." "What nuclear option?" Grandma smiled. "Remember that secret group chat you told me about? The one where Jessica posted about having less one person, more money for us?" "Yes. I want you to join that group chat." I stared at her. "How would I do that?" "By giving them exactly what they think they want. Tomorrow, you're going to call your family and tell them you've realized they're right. You're overwhelmed. I need professional care, and you're ready to discuss assisted living facilities." They'll never believe that. They'll believe it because it's what they've been desperately hoping to hear. And once you're back in their good graces, they'll add you to their group chat to coordinate the next steps. "What next steps?" Grandma's eyes glinted with the sharpness that had built a $2 million business from nothing. "The ones where they admit in writing exactly what they've been planning. Because the best way to defeat a conspiracy is to make the conspirators document their own crimes." What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments. This story is about to take a turn no one will see coming. Monday morning, I made the phone call that would change everything. "Jessica? It's Cynthia. I need to talk to the family. You were right about everything. The pause on the other end was so long I thought the call had dropped. What do you mean? I let my voice crack slightly. I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. Grandma's getting worse, and I'm starting to make mistakes with her medications. Maybe it is time to consider professional care. Oh, Cynthia. Jessica's voice filled with what sounded like genuine relief. I'm so glad you're finally being honest with yourself. This has been so hard to watch. Within 2 hours, the entire family had assembled in my parents' living room. I arrived looking appropriately disheveled, with dark circles under my eyes and trembling hands from stress. We're so proud of you for recognizing your limitations, Mom said, patting my shoulder. It takes strength to admit when you need help. Dad nodded approvingly. This is what family support looks like. We're going to figure this out together. Uncle David leaned forward. We've continued researching care facilities. There are some excellent options that can provide immediate placement. How immediately? I asked weakly. This week, Aunt Sarah replied. We've already contacted Sunshine Manor. They have an opening in their memory care unit. Memory care. For a woman whose APS evaluation had confirmed complete mental competency. They weren't even pretending this was about medical necessity anymore. What about the cost? I asked. That's the beauty of it, Marcus said eagerly. The facility fee comes directly from her estate. It's like she's paying for her own care. Translation? They'd found a way to drain Grandma's assets on expensive institutional care, leaving less money for inheritance while positioning themselves as responsible family members. Have you discussed this with Grandma? Jessica smiled. We thought it would be better coming from you. She trusts your judgment about her care. They wanted me to manipulate Grandma into accepting placement, using our relationship as a weapon against her independence. I don't know if she'll agree, I said hesitantly. She will, Dad said confidently. Once she sees how overwhelmed you are, she'll want what's best for everyone. Uncle David pulled out his phone. Actually, we should add you to our family coordination group. We've been using it to organize Helen's care transition. There it was. The invitation I'd been waiting for. Family coordination group? Just a group chat where we share updates and coordinate logistics. Much easier than individual phone calls. He added me to inheritance planning with a casual swipe. I watched 7 participants become 8, trying not to smile. Great, I said weakly. I could use the support. The group chat immediately came alive with messages of welcome and encouragement. But what I saw in the message history made my blood run cold. Jessica, 3 days ago. Cynthia's starting to crack. Give her another week and she'll be begging us to take over. Marcus, 2 days ago. Richardson says we need documented evidence of mental instability. Those fake Facebook posts should work. Dad, yesterday. APS cleared the case, but that just means we need to try harder. Guardianship is still our best option. Uncle David. This morning. If Cynthia agrees to facility placement, we can argue Helen's being manipulated into compliance. Either way, we win custody. They'd been planning to weaponize my cooperation against Grandma, using my apparent breakdown as evidence that she needed protection from my unstable influence. But the message that made my hands shake came from someone I hadn't expected. Aunt Sarah, this morning. Once Helen's in memory care, we can start liquidating assets. I've already contacted realtors about the house value. They weren't just planning to institutionalize Grandma. They were planning to sell her home while she was alive, destroying everything she'd built during 60 years of marriage. I screenshotted every message and forwarded them to Robert Chen with the subject line, evidence of conspiracy. Then I sent one message to the group. Thanks for including me. I'm going to talk to Grandma about Sunshine Manor tonight. I think she'll be relieved to know we're all working together for her best interests. The responses were immediate and enthusiastic. They thought they'd finally won. That evening, I showed Grandma the group chat messages. Look at this, I said, pointing to Uncle David's message about guardianship. They're planning to argue that you're being manipulated no matter what you decide. Grandma read each message carefully, her expression growing colder with every revelation. They want to sell my house, she said quietly, while you're still alive. They're treating you like you're already dead. She looked at the message about liquidating assets and shook her head. 60 years Robert and I worked to buy this house. 60 years of mortgage payments, repairs, improvements, and they want to sell it for cash. What do you want to do? Grandma was quiet for a long moment, staring at the group chat evidence of her children's betrayal. Then she looked up with an expression I'd never seen before. I want to give them exactly what they deserve. Tuesday morning, I received my instructions. Grandma had spent the night planning what she called the performance of a lifetime. Here's what's going to happen, she said. You're going to arrange a family meeting for Thursday evening. Tell them I want to discuss my care options with everyone present. What will you tell them? That I've decided to enter Sunshine Manor voluntarily, effective next Monday. I want them to feel like they've won completely. But you're not actually going there. Of course not, but they don't know that. And between now and Monday, they're going to reveal exactly how deep this conspiracy goes. She handed me a list of tasks. Contact Richardson's law firm and request a meeting about updating estate documents to reflect changed circumstances. Call Sunshine Manor and inquire about admission procedures. Research power of attorney documents for family management of financial affairs. You want me to help them build their case against you? I want them to think you're helping them, because overconfident criminals always make mistakes. And when they do, we'll be ready. That afternoon, I sent carefully crafted messages to the family group chat. Talked to Grandma last night. She's more confused than I realized. Kept asking about people who died years ago and couldn't remember taking her medications. I think we need to move faster than planned. The response was immediate and revealing. Jessica, document everything. Richardson needs evidence of mental decline. Marcus, start recording conversations if you can do it legally. Dad, has she said anything about changing her will? Uncle David, we should expedite the guardianship paperwork. Strike while the iron is hot. Aunt Sarah, is she still resistant to facility care? I replied, she's starting to ask about going somewhere safe. I think Thursday's meeting will be the perfect time to present the manor option. What they didn't know was that every message they sent was being forwarded to Robert Chen, building an unassailable case that they were conspiring to defraud an elderly woman through false claims of mental incompetence. Wednesday evening, Richardson's office called to schedule Friday's meeting. Mr. Richardson is very pleased that Mrs. Morrison is considering updating her estate documents, his secretary said. He's prepared preliminary guardianship papers in case immediate intervention becomes necessary. Guardianship papers. Ready before Grandma had even agreed to anything. I thanked her politely and hung up, then immediately called Robert Chen. They've prepared guardianship documents before meeting with her, I reported. This isn't about her welfare. It's a predetermined plan to seize control of her assets. Perfect, Chen replied. Let them file those papers. We'll be ready with a countersuit that will destroy their credibility permanently. Thursday's family meeting was set for 7 p.m. By 6:30, everyone had arrived with expressions of hopeful anticipation. They thought they were about to witness Grandma's surrender. Instead, they were about to provide evidence for their own prosecution. Thursday's family meeting began with everyone positioning themselves around Grandma's living room like a tribunal. They'd brought documents, brochures, and rehearsed arguments for why immediate action was necessary. What they didn't know was that I'd positioned 3 different recording devices around the room, and Robert Chen was parked outside with a backup audio system in case they discovered my equipment. Helen, Uncle David began formally, we've all been discussing your situation and we're very concerned about the level of care you're receiving. What concerns you? Grandma asked mildly. Well, for instance, Cynthia mentioned that you've been confused lately, forgetting medications, asking about people who've passed away. I'd never said that. They were lying about conversations that had never happened, building their case in real time. Did she mention specific incidents? Grandma asked. Jessica consulted her notes. She said you asked about Robert coming home for dinner last Tuesday. Grandpa Robert had been dead for 5 years. It was a heartbreaking example of confusion that would make perfect evidence of mental decline, except it had never happened. That's concerning, Grandma replied. I don't remember saying that. Dad leaned forward. That's exactly the problem, Mom. Memory issues often start small but progress quickly. We need to make sure you're in a safe environment. What kind of environment? Aunt Sarah opened her brochure with practiced efficiency. We found a wonderful facility called Sunshine Manor. They specialize in memory care and have immediate availability. Memory care. For people experiencing cognitive decline, Marcus explained. They have medical staff available 24/7 and structured activities designed to maintain mental function. They were diagnosing Grandma with dementia based on fictional conversations while sitting in her living room, talking to her like she was already incompetent. How expensive is this facility? Grandma asked. Don't worry about the cost, Dad said dismissively. Your assets can cover it easily. For how long? Uncle David did quick math in his head. $10,000 per month means your current savings would last about 15 years. He was lying. At $10,000 per month, Grandma's $2 million in assets would last less than 17 years, assuming no medical emergencies or increased care costs. But they were betting she couldn't do the math herself. And after 15 years? We'll figure that out when the time comes, Jessica said vaguely. Translation. They'd have inherited what was left, and her care would become someone else's problem. What about my house? Aunt Sarah exchanged glances with the others. Well, if you're living in a facility, there's really no need to maintain an empty house. We could sell it and invest the proceeds for your care. Who would handle the sale? Family members with power of attorney, Dad said. We'd make sure you get fair market value. Grandma nodded thoughtfully. And who would have power of attorney? We've discussed it as a family, Uncle David said. David Richardson has prepared documents that would give us shared authority to handle your financial affairs. All of you? Well, the adult children primarily. Jessica, Marcus, and Cynthia would have secondary authority for day-to-day decisions. They'd structured it so the people inheriting the least money had the most control, while the main beneficiaries were excluded from financial decisions. What does Cynthia think about this arrangement? I looked up from my corner chair where I'd been playing the role of exhausted, defeated caregiver. I think whatever's best for you, Grandma. I'm clearly not equipped to handle your medical needs anymore. You've been doing an excellent job, she said gently. But I'm making mistakes. Missing medication times, forgetting appointments. You need professional care. Jessica jumped in. Jessica? Cynthia's been incredibly dedicated, but this situation is beyond what any family member should be expected to handle. I see. Grandma looked around the room at each face. So you all believe I need to leave my home immediately? The sooner the better, Marcus said. Memory issues tend to progress rapidly once they start. And you think I'm incompetent to manage my own financial affairs? Not incompetent, Dad said carefully. Just vulnerable to confusion during a difficult time. What if I don't want to leave my house? The room fell silent. They'd assumed she would cooperate once presented with their unified front. Uncle David cleared his throat. Helen, sometimes people with cognitive decline don't recognize their own limitations. That's why family has to make difficult decisions. Are you saying I don't have a choice? You have choices, Aunt Sarah said quickly. But they need to be informed choices made with family guidance. Because I'm not capable of making informed choices independently? Jessica shifted uncomfortably. Grandma, we're just trying to protect you. From what? From making decisions you might regret later when your condition worsens. Grandma was quiet for a long moment, letting their implications hang in the air. Then she looked directly at me. Cynthia, do you believe I'm mentally incompetent? This was the moment she'd prepared me for. The test that would reveal everything. I think you're scared, I said carefully. And when people are scared and sick, sometimes they need family to help them make difficult decisions. Even if those decisions go against what the person wants, sometimes what we want isn't what's best for us. The family relaxed visibly. I was supporting their narrative that Grandma needed protection from her own judgment. So you all believe, Grandma said slowly, that I should enter a memory care facility against my preferences, sell my home without my approval, and transfer financial control to family members who will make decisions about my money without my input. We believe you should receive professional care in a safe environment, Dad corrected. But if I refuse? Uncle David leaned forward. Helen, we've consulted with legal experts about situations like this. Sometimes families have to petition for guardianship to protect elderly relatives who can't protect themselves. You've already consulted lawyers about taking away my legal rights? Only as a last resort, Jessica said quickly. We're hoping you'll recognize that this is what's best for everyone, including the people who would inherit my money after it's been spent on facility care. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. She'd just exposed the financial motive underlying their concern. This isn't about money, Marcus said defensively. Isn't it? You want me in an expensive facility that will consume my assets while you gain power of attorney over what's left. How is that not about money? Dad stood up abruptly. We're trying to help you, and you're questioning our motives. I'm questioning everything, Grandma replied calmly, because something about this doesn't feel like help. The meeting devolved quickly after that. They tried guilt, claiming their hearts were breaking watching me struggle. They tried medical authority, insisting that professionals knew better than family. They even tried reverse psychology, suggesting that maybe Grandma was right and they should just walk away from trying to help. Nothing worked. Because Grandma had one advantage they hadn't anticipated. She was recording every word while pretending to be the confused elderly woman they were trying to exploit. After they left, she looked at me with satisfaction. How did I do? Perfect. They basically admitted to planning financial exploitation while claiming it was for your own good. And tomorrow's meeting with Richardson? We'll let him incriminate himself further. The more confident they become, the more evidence they'll provide. But neither of us anticipated what would happen Friday morning. A knock at the door revealed 2 police officers and a social worker with expressions of official concern. Ma'am, we have a court order for a welfare check and competency evaluation. Someone has petitioned for emergency guardianship based on concerns about elder abuse. They'd moved faster than expected, using our recorded conversation as evidence that Grandma was being manipulated into refusing care. The war had just escalated to a level none of us had prepared for. The court-ordered competency evaluation began at 9 a.m. Friday morning with Dr. Patricia Williams, a geriatric psychiatrist who specialized in guardianship cases. Mrs. Morrison, I'm here to assess your mental capacity to make decisions about your own care and finances, she explained gently. This evaluation was requested by family members who are concerned about your well-being. What Dr. Williams didn't know was that Grandma had spent Thursday night reviewing legal websites about competency standards and practicing answers to common evaluation questions. I understand, Grandma replied. May I ask what specific concerns my family has raised? Dr. Williams consulted her notes. They've reported recent confusion, memory problems, and possible undue influence from your current caregiver. They're seeking guardianship to ensure you receive appropriate medical care. What kind of confusion have they reported? Asking about deceased relatives as if they were still alive, forgetting medications, difficulty making rational decisions about your living situation. Grandma nodded thoughtfully. Doctor, have you reviewed my actual medical records? I've received some information from your family, but I'd like to examine your current medical documentation. I handed over the comprehensive file I'd prepared. 3 months of medication logs showing perfect compliance, weekly vital sign records, doctor's notes from every appointment, and cognitive assessment scores from routine medical exams. Dr. Williams spent 20 minutes reviewing the documents with increasing surprise. Mrs. Morrison, according to your medical records, you've shown no signs of cognitive decline. Your mini mental state exam scores are consistently in the normal range, and your medication compliance is exemplary. That's been my experience as well, Grandma replied, though I'm concerned that my family believes otherwise. Let's do a comprehensive cognitive assessment right now. For the next hour, Dr. Williams administered every standard test for mental competency: memory recall, problem solving, mathematical reasoning, spatial awareness, judgment scenarios. Grandma passed everything with scores that would be impressive for someone 30 years younger. Mrs. Morrison, I'm confused about why this evaluation was requested. Your cognitive function is completely normal. Perhaps you should ask my family about their specific observations. Dr. Williams made extensive notes, then moved to the second phase of her evaluation, assessing my relationship with Grandma for signs of undue influence. Cynthia, can you describe your role in Mrs. Morrison's care? I explained the daily routine, medical management, and coordination with her healthcare team. Dr. Williams observed our interactions, looking for signs of control, manipulation, or inappropriate influence. Do you make decisions for your grandmother? Never. I provide information and support, but she makes all her own choices. Has she expressed gratitude for your care in ways that might affect her estate planning? The question was designed to reveal whether I was manipulating Grandma for financial gain. She's never discussed her will with me, I replied honestly. I didn't know about any inheritance until my family started acting strangely. Dr. Muna. Williams turned to Grandma. Have you made any recent changes to your estate planning? No, my will was finalized years ago with my husband's input. I've had no reason to change it. Have you considered changing it based on your current care situation? No, the will reflects my values and intentions, which haven't changed. Dr. Williams spent another hour interviewing us separately, then together, looking for inconsistencies or evidence of coaching. She found none, because our relationship was exactly what it appeared to be: a granddaughter caring for someone she loved, and a grandmother grateful for that care but making her own decisions. At 1 p.m., Dr. Williams delivered her preliminary findings. Mrs. Morrison is completely mentally competent. She demonstrates excellent judgment, normal cognitive function, and clear understanding of her situation. I see no evidence of undue influence or manipulation in her current care arrangement. She paused, reviewing her notes. However, I am concerned about the family dynamics I've observed. The reports of confusion and cognitive decline appear to be either completely fabricated or based on misunderstanding normal aging processes. What does that mean for the guardianship petition? I'll be recommending that it be denied. Mrs. Morrison doesn't need a guardian. She needs protection from family members who appear to be making false claims about her mental capacity. After Dr. Williams left, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. We'd won the competency battle, but my family would now escalate to more desperate measures. That afternoon, Richardson's office called to reschedule Friday's meeting. Mr. Richardson needs to review some new information before proceeding with Mrs. Morrison's estate updates, his secretary explained. The new information was probably Dr. Williams' report, which would destroy their claims about Grandma's mental decline. At 4 p.m., my phone started buzzing with panicked messages from the family group chat. Dad, the evaluation didn't go as expected. Richardson says we need to reconsider our approach. Jessica, how is that possible? Cynthia told us Helen was confused and forgetting things. Marcus, maybe Cynthia was exaggerating to get our attention. Uncle David, we need to meet tonight. This changes everything. They were realizing that their strategy had backfired. By pushing for a competency evaluation, they generated official documentation that Grandma was mentally sound and I wasn't manipulating her. Aunt Sarah, what about the facility placement? We already put down a deposit at Sunshine Manor. Dad, we'll lose the deposit, but that's better than losing everything else. Jessica, are we giving up on the guardianship? Uncle David, we can't pursue guardianship if she's been declared competent. Richardson says we'd need evidence of actual abuse or exploitation. Marcus, what about the inheritance? Are we just going to let Cynthia get everything? The desperation in their messages was palpable. Their legal strategy had collapsed. The medical evidence contradicted their claims, and they were running out of options. But what came next made my blood run cold. Dad, there might be another way. If Helen had an accident that left her actually incapacitated, the guardianship would be necessary. Jessica, what kind of accident? Dad, medication errors can be very dangerous for elderly patients. Easy to make mistakes when you're not properly trained. They were discussing harming Grandma to create the medical emergency that would justify their guardianship petition. I screenshotted the conversation and immediately called Robert Chen. This has moved beyond civil litigation, he said grimly. You need to contact the police immediately. They're discussing elder abuse and possibly attempted murder. What about Grandma's safety? Document everything, but don't confront them directly. Let them continue planning while we build a criminal case against them. That evening, I showed Grandma the group chat messages about creating an accident. They want to hurt you to get your money, I said, my voice shaking. Grandma read the messages with the calm expression of someone who'd finally seen the true nature of people she'd loved and supported for decades. Then it's time to end this, she said quietly. Tomorrow, we're filing a police report, changing my will, and making sure they get exactly what they deserve. What do they deserve? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Saturday morning would bring the final confrontation, but this time we'd be ready with evidence, witnesses, and legal backup that would destroy their conspiracy permanently. The family that had spent months planning to exploit an elderly woman was about to learn what happened when that woman fought back with everything she had. Saturday morning, we walked into the police station with 3 folders of evidence and a determination to end this nightmare once and for all. Detective Sarah Palmer reviewed our documentation with the expression of someone who'd seen family greed turn criminal before. This is one of the most comprehensive elder abuse cases I've encountered, she said, examining the screenshots of my family's group chat. They've essentially documented their own conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. Months of messages coordinating their manipulation strategy. Fake social media posts created to support claims of my mental instability. Plans to force Grandma into expensive institutional care to drain her assets. And most damning, recent discussions about creating a medical emergency to justify guardianship. The conversation about medication errors crosses the line from civil fraud to criminal conspiracy, Detective Palmer explained. We can arrest them on charges of attempted elder abuse and fraud. What about the guardianship petition? With Dr. Williams's competency evaluation and this evidence of fabricated claims, any judge would dismiss it immediately. But more importantly, they've provided grounds for restraining orders and criminal prosecution. At 2 p.m., while my family was gathered for their emergency strategy meeting, police officers knocked on my parents' door with arrest warrants. I wasn't there, but Uncle David later described the scene as completely humiliating. Dad answered the door expecting maybe a neighbor complaint about their shouting. Instead, he found Detective Palmer with handcuffs and charges of conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The arrests were swift and efficient. Dad, Mom, Jessica, Marcus, Uncle David, and Aunt Sarah were all taken into custody based on the evidence from their own group chat. Richardson's law firm immediately distanced themselves from the case, claiming they'd been misled about Grandma's mental competency and hadn't authorized any discussions of harming elderly clients. Sunday morning's newspaper featured the story on the front page, "Local Family Arrested in Elder Abuse Conspiracy." The article included quotes from Detective Palmer about the sophisticated nature of their scheme and the importance of protecting elderly residents from financial predators. But the real satisfaction came Monday morning, when Grandma and I met with Robert Chen to update her will. I want to make some changes, she announced, settling into the chair across from his desk. What kind of changes? Complete restructuring. The house still goes to Cynthia, but I'm changing the life insurance beneficiary and adding specific clauses about the behavior I've witnessed. Chen pulled out legal forms and began taking notes. The $1.2 million life insurance policy now goes entirely to Cynthia, with a provision that anyone who contests this will forfeit any other inheritance. And the business assets? Originally designated for equal distribution among grandchildren, I'm changing that. Marcus and Jessica forfeit their shares due to participation in criminal conspiracy. Their portions now go to Cynthia as well. Chen looked up from his writing. That's a significant change. Are you certain? Completely certain. Children who try to harm me for money don't deserve to inherit anything I worked to build. What about your other children who weren't directly involved? Grandma considered this. David and Sarah were active participants in the conspiracy. They forfeit everything. Thomas showed poor judgment but wasn't part of the criminal planning. He can keep his portion of the business assets. The new will was legally bulletproof. Witnessed, notarized, and filed immediately with backup copies sent to multiple law firms. When it was finished, I would inherit the house, the life insurance, and nearly 80% of Grandma's total assets. My father would receive his minimal share only if he didn't contest the will. Everyone else involved in the conspiracy would receive nothing. How do you feel about inheriting this much money? Chen asked me. Overwhelmed, I replied honestly. I never expected or asked for any of this. That's exactly why you deserve it, Grandma said firmly. You cared for me because you loved me, not because you wanted something from me. Tuesday brought the family's response to their legal troubles. Dad posted bail and immediately called, his voice a mixture of rage and desperation. Cynthia, you've destroyed this family over money. How can you live with yourself? I documented what you were planning to do to Grandma. You destroyed yourselves. We were trying to protect her from your manipulation. By discussing how to cause medication errors that would harm her? Silence on the other end. Then, that was taken out of context. What context makes discussing harming an elderly woman acceptable? He hung up without answering. Jessica's message came through the old family group chat. You've turned everyone against each other. Grandma isn't even sick enough to need this level of care, I replied with a screenshot of Dr. Williams's competency evaluation and Grandma's medical records showing kidney failure. She has a terminal diagnosis. The care is appropriate and necessary. Jessica, you're just trying to look like a saint while stealing her money. I didn't know about any inheritance until you started planning to exclude me from it. No response. Because they couldn't argue with the truth. Marcus tried a different approach, calling Grandma directly to plead for forgiveness. Grandma, I never meant for things to go this far. Can't we work this out as a family? Marcus, you participated in plans to harm me for financial gain. What part of that suggests family loyalty? We were just worried about your care situation. You were worried about inheritance money being spent on my care instead of being preserved for you. There's a difference. That evening, Grandma and I sat in her living room, surrounded by the comfortable silence of a war finally ended. Do you regret how this turned out? I asked. I regret learning what my children were capable of, but I don't regret protecting myself or rewarding someone who actually demonstrated love instead of just claiming it. What happens now? Now you finish your family leave knowing I'm safe. You return to your career with enough financial security to choose jobs based on satisfaction rather than necessity. And when the time comes, you use this money to build something meaningful. I looked around the living room that would soon be mine. 60 years of memories, filled with furniture Grandma and Grandpa had chosen together. Photographs of better times when family meant something different. I want you to stay here as long as possible, I said. I will. But when I can't anymore, I want you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let bitterness about your family poison your life. They made their choices. You make yours. 3 months later, Grandma died peacefully in her sleep. I was holding her hand when she passed, just as she'd hoped. Her funeral was small but meaningful. Several neighbors attended, along with her medical team and Robert Chen. None of my family came. They were still dealing with legal consequences from their conspiracy charges. After the service, Detective Palmer approached me. How are you holding up? Better than expected. She was ready to go. And the inheritance? Enough to change my life completely. She made sure I'd never have to worry about money again. Palmer nodded. She was a remarkable woman, smart enough to protect herself and generous enough to reward loyalty. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, a consulting firm. I'd started to help elderly people navigate family financial abuse when my phone rang. Cynthia, it's Jessica. I almost hung up, but curiosity won. What do you want? To apologize. The criminal charges were dropped to misdemeanors, but the legal fees destroyed our finances. I've had time to think about what we did. And we were wrong. Completely wrong. Grandma was never incompetent, you never manipulated her, and we convinced ourselves that wanting her money was the same as caring about her welfare. I was quiet for a long moment. Are you apologizing because you feel guilty? Or because you want something? Both, probably. The new will became public record. We know you inherited almost everything. So? So maybe there's a way to work something out. Family shouldn't be destroyed over money. I almost laughed. Jessica, you destroyed the family when you decided money was more important than Grandma's well-being. I just documented it. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive us? I have forgiven you. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending your actions didn't have consequences. After I hung up, I thought about Grandma's advice about not letting bitterness poison my life. I wasn't bitter. I was grateful. I was grateful for learning the difference between people who love you and people who love what you can do for them. Grateful for discovering that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's building something so successful that the people who tried to destroy you become irrelevant. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear that family isn't always blood, and blood isn't always family. Sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones you need protection from. 2 years later, I'm standing in the kitchen of the house that's now officially mine, making coffee while sunrise streams through windows that haven't changed since 1987. Some mornings I still expect to hear Grandma calling from the living room, asking if I remembered her morning medications. The silence is different now. Not empty, just peaceful. My consulting firm has grown beyond anything I imagined. Morrison Elder Advocacy serves families across 3 states, helping elderly people protect themselves from financial abuse. We've prevented dozens of situations like Grandma's, teaching people to recognize manipulation disguised as concern. The irony isn't lost on me. My family's greed created the expertise that now helps other families avoid similar exploitation. This morning brings a familiar ritual. I'm preparing for a client meeting with an 82-year-old woman whose children want her to sell her home and move into assisted living. The children claim it's for her safety. The woman suspects it's for her money. My phone buzzes with a text from Marcus. He messages once every few months, usually around holidays or family anniversaries. Thinking about Grandma today. Miss our family dinners. I don't respond anymore. What would be the point? He misses family dinners from a time when family meant something different to all of us. At 10 a.m., Mrs. Patterson arrives for our consultation. She's sharp, independent, and suspicious of her children's sudden interest in her welfare. They've been absent for years, she explains, settling into Grandma's old chair. Now they're calling daily, worried about me living alone. I pull out my intake forms. When did this concern begin? Right after my doctor mentioned my assets during a routine appointment. They think I didn't notice, but I've seen the real estate listings they've been browsing. The pattern is identical to Grandma's situation. Adult children who discover their parent has significant assets suddenly developing opinions about appropriate care and living arrangements. Have they suggested specific alternatives? A lovely facility that costs $8,000 per month. They've already toured it without my permission. I spend 2 hours teaching Mrs. Patterson about protective strategies, legal documents that preserve her autonomy, warning signs of escalating manipulation, resources for independent medical and legal advice. The most important thing, I tell her, is remembering that loving family members support your choices. They don't try to override them. After she leaves, I sit in Grandma's chair and review the case notes. Another family treating an elderly parent like a resource to be managed rather than a person to be respected. My phone rings. Unknown number, but I recognize the area code. Cynthia, this is David Richardson, the lawyer who'd tried to build a guardianship case against Grandma. I almost hang up, but professional curiosity wins. What do you want? I'm calling to congratulate you on your advocacy work. I've heard excellent things about your firm. Thank you. I also wanted to apologize for my role in your family's situation. I was misled about your grandmother's condition and should have verified the medical claims independently. I'm quiet for a moment. Why are you calling now? Because I have a potential client who needs your services. An elderly gentleman whose family is using tactics similar to what your relatives attempted. I thought you'd be the perfect advocate for his situation. The irony is staggering. The lawyer who tried to help steal Grandma's autonomy now wants to hire me to protect someone else's independence. I'll need complete disclosure about any connections you have to the family involved. Of course, I learned some hard lessons about conflicts of interest. After scheduling the consultation, I walk through the house that holds so many memories. Grandma's bedroom, which I've converted into a home office. The kitchen where we spent hours talking about her childhood during the Depression. The living room where she taught me that love is measured by presents, not promises. The doorbell rings at 4 p.m. Through the window, I see a delivery truck with a package requiring signature. Inside the box is a beautiful wooden plaque with an engraved message, in memory of Helen Morrison, who taught us that true strength is protecting what matters most. The return address shows it's from Mrs. Patterson, a thank you gift for helping her navigate her family's manipulation. These moments remind me why Grandma's money became my mission rather than my windfall. I could have used the inheritance to buy a bigger house, travel extensively, or retire early. Instead, I invested it in building something that protects other elderly people from experiencing what she endured. That evening, I'm updating case files when my doorbell rings again. Through the security camera, I see a woman about my age with nervous energy and familiar features. I open the door to find someone I recognize from old family photos. My cousin Emma, Jessica's younger sister. "Cynthia, I know this is unexpected, but I need to talk to you." I hesitate, then step aside. "Come in." Emma looks around the living room with obvious emotion. It looks exactly the same, like Grandma's still here. "What do you want, Emma?" "My mother's in trouble. Financial trouble that's going to affect my college fund." Jessica's daughter. The next generation dealing with consequences of their parents' greed. What kind of trouble? Legal fees from the elder abuse case bankrupted them. Mom's been borrowing against my education fund to pay lawyers. I'm supposed to start graduate school next year, but there's no money left. I sit across from her, studying a face that carries Jessica's features, but hopefully not her values. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because everyone says you inherited everything, and I was hoping maybe you'd consider helping family." The request hangs in the air between us. She's asking me to use Grandma's money to fix problems created by her mother's attempt to steal Grandma's money. "Emma, do you understand what your mother did? She made mistakes, bad mistakes, but does that mean I should lose my future? Your mother participated in a conspiracy to harm my grandmother for financial gain. The consequences of that choice aren't my responsibility." Emma's eyes fill with tears. "I know what she did was wrong, but I'm not her. I didn't participate in any of that." "You're right. You didn't participate. But you benefited from a family system that treated elderly relatives as sources of income rather than people deserving respect. So you won't help at all?" I consider her request carefully. Grandma had strong opinions about rewarding bad behavior, but she also believed in giving people chances to prove they were different from their parents. "I'll make you an offer. If you want help with graduate school, you can earn it." "How?" "Work for my advocacy firm. Minimum wage, part-time while you're in school. Help other families avoid what happened to us. If you demonstrate genuine commitment to protecting elderly people instead of exploiting them, I'll consider paying for your education." Emma stares at me. "You want me to work for the money instead of just giving it to me?" "I want you to prove you understand the difference between earning something and taking it." "What if I refuse?" "Then you figure out graduate school the same way millions of other students do, through loans, scholarships, and hard work." She's quiet for a long moment, probably calculating whether swallowing her pride is worth potential tuition assistance. "When would I start?" "Monday morning, 8 a.m., wear professional clothes and bring a notebook." After Emma leaves, I sit in Grandma's chair and think about second chances. She'd probably approve of my offer. An opportunity for redemption, but only through demonstrated change rather than empty apologies. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. "This is Emma. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll be there Monday morning." 6 months later, Emma has become one of my most dedicated employees. She answers phones, organizes case files, and accompanies me to client meetings. More importantly, she's learned to recognize manipulation tactics because she witnessed them firsthand in her own family. "I never realized how cruel Mom was being to Grandma," she confided during a lunch break. "I thought she was just worried about inheritance planning. What do you think now?" "Now I think she was worried about inheritance preservation." There's a difference. Emma's transformation gives me hope that some family relationships can be salvaged, even after serious betrayals. Not through pretending the harm didn't happen, but through acknowledging it and choosing different behavior. As for my parents and siblings, they occasionally surface with attempts at reconciliation. Birthday cards with messages about missing family. Holiday invitations to gatherings I'm not actually welcome at. Social media posts about the importance of forgiveness. I don't respond. Not out of bitterness, but because forgiveness doesn't require relationship restoration. I've forgiven them for trying to harm Grandma. That doesn't mean I trust them not to try again. The house where I now live alone holds 60 years of love and 5 years of my own healing. Every morning, I make coffee in Grandma's kitchen and plan my day around protecting people she would have cared about. Every evening, I review cases and update files, knowing that somewhere, an elderly person is sleeping safely in their own home because someone helped them recognize manipulation disguised as love. The money my family tried to steal has become a shield for people they'll never meet. The inheritance they schemed to control now controls whether other families can attempt similar exploitation. Grandma's final gift wasn't just financial security, it was purpose. The knowledge that love multiplied becomes protection, while greed eventually consumes itself. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family betrayal and finding strength in unexpected places. Share it with someone who needs to hear that. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting, even it's building something so meaningful that the people who tried to destroy you become footnotes in a much larger story. Remember, family isn't always blood, and blood isn't always family. The people who truly love you will celebrate your success, not scheme to take it away. And if you're caring for an elderly family member right now, document everything. Love doesn't need to hide in shadows, but greed always does. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Grandma would have liked knowing her story helped other people protect themselves and their loved ones. Sometimes the best inheritance isn't money. It's the wisdom to recognize who deserves your trust and who's earned their consequences.